Let's bring in our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. So, Michael, getting back to the nuts and bolts of what has been proposed, what we know has been proposed, a key thing is obviously going to be land. What do we know about what has been suggested to Ukraine that they should give up and what their feelings are about that?
Well, we're back to the old routine that the Ukrainians have said they will not withdraw from the whole of the Donbass, and they've been holding their fortress cities. So, when we think about that area of the Donbass, which is that area, about 25% of Donetsk, which the Ukrainians still hold. And their fortress cities are these big cities, from north to south, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhkivka, Kostiantynivka. And then to the south or west of Kostiantynivka, there's Dobropilia, and then Pokrovsk, which the Russians have probably now got, not absolutely completely, but it's cost them a year and 100,000 casualties to take Pokrovsk, which is about the size of Tunbridge Wells. It's not exactly a major city. So we're talking about the fortress cities, and the Russians they can't take those cities. Militarily, they're trying to get in behind them. And the point is, if those cities were given to them, which is the proposal, then they would be able to move westwards pretty easily at some future time towards Dnipro, to the west of the Dnieper, to the east of the Dnieper River altogether, and into Zaporizhia. So those fortress cities are really important to the Ukrainians. Now, what's being said is that, OK, well, the Ukrainians will withdraw from those cities. The territory will be regarded as Russian, but it'll be a demilitarized zone, as if, having been given the territory de facto, the Russians would then not militarize it in any way. Well, who believes that? Hands up all those who believe that the Russians would keep their military out of it, even if they didn't wear uniforms. So the Ukrainians will never agree to that, or at least Zelensky will never agree to it, and he probably wouldn't last politically if he did. So that's the biggest problem on the ground. We've been talking about that now since the beginning of the year, since Trump became president again, that somehow the Ukrainians have got to give up territory that they still defend and that the Russians have not been able to take.
And the other sticking point, of course, is troop numbers. Russia would obviously like Ukraine to have pretty much no troops whatsoever. What are the different figures and what do they mean for Ukraine?
Yeah, well, there are three figures, really. One, originally, the Russians said that Ukrainian forces will be restricted to about 70 or 80,000 troops, which is nothing in terms of the size of Ukraine. Then in this proposal, the original 28 points, they were talking about 600,000 troops. The counter-proposal says 800,000 troops in peacetime, and that's pretty close to where the Ukrainians are anyway. They've got about 850,000 troops as well in the field. So to be restricted to 800,000 is not so bad in numerical terms in peacetime, because it meant if a war did start again, which it almost certainly would under these proposals, then they'd be able to recruit again. But it's a sovereign diminution of their ability. It's saying that an independent country has got restrictions on the size of its forces. But if we're talking about sheer numbers, they could probably live with 800,000 and feel a bit more secure. But the whole point for Ukraine is that they've got to have a military that's big enough to deter the Russians from coming for the rest of Ukraine, which the Russians have always said they intend to do at some point.
And not just the military, they need to have the backup as well behind them, whether that be America or whether that be Europe and NATO.
Yes, and under the proposals that are going around now, we're saying, well, no NATO troops in Ukraine. So no reassurance force, no coalition of the willing in Ukraine, no air power in Ukraine, no trainers from the West in Ukraine, which would make Ukraine that much more vulnerable. They could come up with a NATO-style guarantee if they wanted to, but who would believe it? If the Americans guaranteed Ukraine, I wouldn't believe it, and I certainly don't think anybody in Kyiv will believe it. The only guarantee for Ukraine is a strong military. That's the point. Their future is being a porcupine, is being an entity which is just too difficult for the Russians to swallow. It can't beat the Russians, but it could just make it too difficult to absorb. It's the same strategy that Taiwan is trying to adopt in relation to China, become a porcupine. And for that, they need to be a military power. So these proposals make that difficult but not impossible as they stand. But the security guarantee for Ukraine is neither here nor there. And in the original 28 points, it was 6 words. That was it, 6 words. It was Ukraine shall have reliable security guarantees. Great. What does that mean?
Exactly. Michael, thank you very much.